доклад. Слово предоставляется Nemanja Lakicevic.
Thank you, Mara. Wonderful presentation. Now, Nemanja Lakicevic, University of Palermo, Italy. Rapid weight loss and mood states in Judo athletes, systemic approach. Yes.
All right. I'm just a bit maybe too tall. Dear committee, dear everybody who was involved in organization of this wonderful conference in this beautiful city, thank you for inviting me. I'm very flattered to be here. I come from University of Palermo in Italy. And today I will talk about a topic that's been a key topic of my PhD, and we continue to do more work in this field. So, namely, I will talk about rapid weight loss in combat sports. In this case, we'll place a particular emphasis on Judo. So, can I get a mic, please? Just a microphone? Yep, okay. Because I would like to move around a bit, it's much easier for me. Sorry. So, as I said, I will speak about rapid weight loss in Judo. That's something that's very prevalent, not just in Judo, but in other combat sports. So, how many of you have trained combat sports? Or competed or know someone who trained combat sports? Just raise your hand. Okay, I mean, this is a country that's very notorious for combat sports. So I just wanted to get a bit familiar with the crowd because I think this topic is quite important. So over the years, we might have seen many news articles coming up about the dangers of rapid weight loss in combat sports that can have very dramatic effects and sometimes even death. So the topic of weight cycling, it's certainly not new to our research team. Over the last couple of years, we published a number of different papers on this topic, and we continue to do so. And we've lately shifted our focus towards kids and adolescents. So, what are the, exactly before going anywhere further, I would like to talk a bit more about what rapid weight loss really is. So in terms of combat sports, rapid weight loss is defined as a 5% weight loss achieved in under a week. But in reality, there are many variations of the same theme. So the magnitudes can differ, the days dedicated to this process can differ. So one is textbook definition, the other thing is reality. So we have to consider that. It's highly prevalent in combat sports and also in Judo, but is often based on tradition and anecdotal evidence rather than real science, which can cause very many problems in terms of performance, but also in terms of health concerns, and can even cause death. So, this would be a typical representative of one weight cycle for a professional athlete, in this case for a Judo athlete. We begin with rapid weight loss that's initiated by severe fluid and food restriction, accompanied by training in plastic suits or rubbery suits, and also frequent sauna use, fasting, and sometimes even using diuretics and other prohibited substances. Then we go to the weigh-in, where athletes try to have the least weight possible, and then in between the weigh-in and the competition, there's a period of rapid weight gain, where athletes try to kind of replenish the lost fluids and nutrients. And of course, there's an official competition, and then athletes go back to their regular rest and training. So, what is the rationale for this study? Basically, there's not much data. We have a very scarcity of the data, and psychological well-being in combat sports is very much so neglected compared to performance and health. Also, there's no synthesis of the current evidence in this field. So, we our research team gathered in order to form a hypothesis, and it was twofold. First one, that the rapid weight loss will indeed induce adverse psychological effects in these athletes. And the second part was that the greater the magnitude of weight loss, the worse the psychological outcomes will be. And here, all right, before proceeding with this slide, I would like to give you just a real-life example. This is the case of 3 MMA athletes preparing for the upcoming competition. So you might want to look at the video to see the effect.
What goes through your mind at this point? How bad things will be at the Miss Weight.
Sweating as much as you can, and the only person I had in my hotel room with me helping me cut weight was my best friend, and she's not a fighter. She's not like an athlete. She's just there to be my support system, and she left the room because I was sitting in the bathtub trying to sweat, and she came back and I was passed out on the floor. You just lay there and you pray, and honestly, I was just praying like, Lord, please do not kill me. Like, please do not let me die doing this. And I had my best friend praying.
We're just trying to get you up.
Sure.
No.
The bath for me, the worst case, because burning really hot.
Baby, breathe, baby. Baby, it's 105 degrees.
I go inside the bath and I pray there and I cry.
So as you can see just from this brief couple of videos, the situation is pretty dramatic, but this is often done behind the scenes. You cannot see much of this content shown in the media. So based on this premise and the scarcity of the data, we decided to search the literature. And for the purpose of this research study, we gathered a group of international experts in sports science, but also in many fields of combat sports science. And we had several aims. First one actually was to systematically review the literature. The next one was to outline key points, to present the data in a clear and concise way, identify a gap in the literature and point the direction for the future studies, and also to compare to what's already been published. But we have to keep in mind the data that's published, it's very scarce. The methods were pretty common for systematic reviews. We followed the PRISMA, which is pretty much a gold standard for conducting systematic reviews and meta-analysis. We searched PubMed and Web of Science for the relevant articles. We only had studies that were included were only using POMS scale and during this weight cutting process. Also, we used Newcastle-Ottawa scale to check the quality of the included studies. 2 junior researchers performed the search, and the full professor, in this case Professor Drid here, made a final decision in the case of disagreement. And investigators were not blinded to the study titles and authors. This is a POM scale that's commonly used in various sports, but also in combat sports. And it elaborates on 6 domains of psychological well-being, in this case, tension, vigor, depression, confusion, fatigue, and anger. So, we had about 200 participants coming from 3 countries. About 200 participants, as I said, and a very small portion of them were female. Studies varied vastly in design, as you will see. But the commonality is the pattern, this common pattern that we've seen before in many cases of weight cutting. So, we've seen, of course, food and fluid restriction once again, followed by plastic suit training, increased levels of exercise, sauna use, laxative consumption. This is pretty normal. This is pretty usual and a routine for them. Here, I think the most, and this slide usually doesn't appear like this, but I don't know what happened. The number 7 marks 7 days, because studies varied in the design and the days that were dedicated actually for the conduction of the studies. So when there's a 3% of weight loss, we don't see any effects on mood states in combat sports athletes, or in this case, in judo athletes. On the other side, the other study from France showed that 5% weight loss increased tension significantly, also anger, fatigue, and there was a significant drop in vigor with no changes in depression and confusion. And in the other control group, there were no changes at all. In one study from Brazil, they had their athletes cutting 10% of their weight, but they had 2 weeks to do that. Their experimental group had to lose 10%, as I said, and we've seen significantly elevated levels in tension, anger, depression, and fatigue, and a significant drop in vigor with no significant effects on confusion. In the weight-stable group, and this is interesting, and I'm going to emphasize this a bit later, we've also seen, even though this was a weight-stable group, we also seen increases in tension and vigor, with no changes in anger, depression, fatigue, and confusion. So even though they haven't decreased any body weight, you see this rise in tension, which is kind of normal when you are preparing for the competition and you know that you're about to face an opponent. So we have to be very careful when we describe this data. And lastly, we have 3 studies that had 20+ days to be conducted. 3 to 5% weight loss produced no changes at all in terms of mood states. On the other side, another study from Japan, they divided group in a group that had to lose more than 5% of weight loss and less than 5%. In a group that had more than 5%, we've seen no changes in tension, depression, anger, and confusion, and a significant drop in vigor and significant increase in fatigue. Pretty common. And the group that had less than 5%, which is not precisely, didn't say 4, 3, or 2%, but it was just less than 5%, we've seen no changes. And the last study, that's quite long as well, I think it was almost 25 days. They had athletes having 2 to 6% weight cutting, with significant increases in tension and confusion and no changes in depression, anger, and fatigue, and a significant drop in vigor. When it comes to control group, there were significant, once again, significant increases in tension and confusion, and no changes in depression, anger, fatigue, and vigor. So, just to wrap this up, to kind of outline the key points, I would say that both of our initial hypotheses were confirmed, that the rapid weight loss will indeed induce psychological disturbances in these athletes, and also the higher the magnitude of weight cutting, the worse psychological outcomes will be. Also, we have to outline the differences between males and females, even though we had a very small proportion of females in this study, or in this review, should I say. In one study I wanted to outline particularly, in a study by Yoshioka from Japan, we had increased levels of tension, fatigue, vigor, and total mood disturbance in males, as expected. But on the other side, anger, confusion, depression, tension, and total mood disturbance actually decreased markedly, which is unexpected. But also, we have to keep in mind that these values were high to begin with, higher in females compared to males. So this is very nuanced, and you have to really be careful when describing this data. What are the limitations of this study? Certainly, it's a small number of studies. It's a small sample size. As I said, there's a scarcity of the data that we have. And only 20% of females were involved in this review. On the other side, strengths. To our knowledge, this is the first systematic review on this matter. And this paper is being currently revised in one good French journal. We pointed out the gaps in the literature. So we said, by conducting this study, we said there's not much data available. And this is very important. And also, we emphasize again the importance of this topic. So, practical implications. Of course, conducting more studies on this topic, emphasizing potential differences between males and females. Also, emphasizing potential differences in terms of age, which can be also quite dramatic. So, someone who is in puberty might experience different rapid weight loss to someone who is adult. And as I would say, prioritizing athletes' health, in this case, combat sports athletes or judo athletes at all times. And the last point here is prohibiting rapid weight loss in children and adolescents. This is something that we advocated from the beginning. And this is a paper that we published last year in a really premier journal that's emphasizing how these kids and adolescents are cutting their weight, and it's pretty dramatic, pretty worrisome. I would encourage you to go and look at it. And based on this paper, we recently created a project called DDCS, which stands for Disordered Eating and Eating Disorders in Youth Combat Sports. So we want to look at this phenomenon of weight cycling from a different perspective. We wanted to say, is this really an eating disorder? Is this really something that's If it's happening repeatedly over the course of years, and especially in children and adolescents, can this be classified as really an eating disorder? So this is our point. And if you want to participate, if you would like to help, if you would like to help us find funding for this as well, please let me know. Here's my contact details. You can reach out to me anytime via email or whatever, and I'll be happy to respond and to discuss with you. Here are the references, and thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Спасибо, Немanja. Ну, после окончания...
Thank you very much. After we finish up all the presentations, by all means, I'll ask you a question, because in the theory and methodology of Russian and Soviet sport, this issue was emphasized as a very, very important one. Next